Greetings, YouTube. Sorry about the poor lighting. The cat's here. We do have a little natural light behind me, at least. Someone asked me the other day if I would be doing any further talking about movies. I decided that, that I have a few things I'd like to say. I've got a huge queue of films I would like to watch in the near future. My wife and I own over 800 DVDs. We have a lot of DVDs in our collection, and a vast majority of them I've never watched. Just pick them up cheap, as I find them at flea markets and yard sales and thrift shops. Saturday night, we watched the Ghostbusters in honor of Harold Ramis. It's still a great film. But today I thought I'd talk about Skyfall. And this is going to be a review of the film. It's a James Bond movie, and if you like James Bond movies, and particularly the versions done by Daniel Craig, you'll probably like this one. So as far as a James Bond action-adventure film goes, it was quite enjoyable. I prefer Daniel Craig's slightly more realistic style of acting, as opposed to the way Roger Moore played James Bond, where Roger Moore knew he was in a movie. It was like James Bond was aware he was in the main character of a storyline. Sean Connery was better, but still the writing style and the cinematographic atmosphere about it was still, to me, a little too plastic. Daniel Craig's version seemed a little more grounded in reality to me. When people get hit, I actually think they're being hit. There's a sense of physicality about it that I like. And I had put off watching Skyfall for a bit because I heard quite a few negative things about it. And people weren't necessarily talking about the storyline a great deal. They were talking about the misogyny, about the sexism. And so I kind of put off about why I didn't see it in the theaters, and I bought it cheap, like, $2 there somewhere. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll finally watch it. So I finally got around to watching it. Because, again, I like Daniel Craig. I like his acting. And I can't hold him responsible for the sexism and misogyny in the film, because I know for a fact that he himself has spoken out on the topic and has done public service announcements dealing with sexism in the world. So I know that isn't something that he personally endorses, though how he could actually play the character that in a story written with this much of a sexist slant is beyond me. But he did. And from the get-go of this film, from like the opening sequence, the female characters are portrayed as weak and incapable of doing their job. You could have portrayed Moneypenny's inability to do her job as inexperienced, but that wasn't the vibe I got. And it was reinforced over the course of the film, where like Bond is looking at her going, it's okay if you don't come back to field agency, it's not for everyone. And it was just one step away from, oh, tut there, dear. Why don't you let the boys play out in the yard? It was horrible. And I began to realize, as I thought about doing this video today, that how many of the relationships that Bond has had in these 3 films he's done with Daniel Craig, Moneypenny's like the only one that's alive. All the rest of them have been killed or committed suicide. That's not a good record. It is not showing a history of strong, positive female roles. And Moneypenny survives this film, but she gets demoted to being a secretary. And the storyline advances, and you have the scene that many people were talking about, where the bad guy, Silver, was his name? I can't remember positive. That they refer to him as Silver, I guess. Essentially hits on Bond, and Bond takes it in stride. And while I have no difficulty believing this happened, they didn't play it any further. It didn't go anywhere. So it was, to me, largely pointless. And this whole film was based around a revenge fantasy of the bad guy. In the first 2 movies with Craig, they're building up this idea that there's this vast international conspiracy with all these tendrils reaching across the planet. And while the second Bond movie was weaker than the first with Craig, I place Skyfall probably on par with, or a little bit better than the second one. At least there was a sense of continuity between the first and second films. And this one just comes out of the blue with this, nothing to do with the first 2 films. It's like the first 2 films didn't exist. I was really confused by that. Why didn't they follow up on it? It made no sense. And then he does battle with bad guys who are... The bad guys are all male. And the followers of this bad guy, Silver, who was the actor with the large prosthetic in his cheek, I can't remember what his name was, are incredibly loyal. There's a point where they fall through a piece of ice into a pond. Now, if you fall through the ice in a pond, you are going to die if you don't get out immediately. Nope. The thug that this guy's hired tries to kill Bond underwater. He's hired muscle. Why the heck is he fighting to kill this guy so bad when he should be scrambling for his life to get out? He can try killing him when they're both out of the water. That was absurd. I'm like, who does that? I mean, like, Thugi fanatic cultists? Maybe. But hired thugs? See the connection there? Thugi, thug. He encounters a woman that leads him to the bad guy. It's the lover of the bad guy. She alludes to how terrifying this guy is, and frankly, this guy isn't that terrifying. I didn't find him terrifying. People alluded to the fact that he was terrifying. He gave a couple of speeches that also alluded to the fact that he was this scary, unstable person, but I never actually saw terrifying acts by this guy. I was not given the impression that he had great skill at psychological torment. Again, I felt that they dropped the ball there. They hinted at something, but they didn't follow through. So they hinted at the whole homoerotic aspect, but didn't follow through with it. So why was it there? It didn't serve any purpose. Unless they just wanted to have someone stroke Bond. Okay. Whatever. So he meets this woman, easily figures out that she's got a brand on her wrist, meaning that she was enslaved as a sex worker. Okay, she was a sex slave. Human trafficking. So what does Bond do the next encounter he has with her after having realized that she was a slave? He walks naked into a shower with her and just assumes that she wants to have sex with him. That is psychologically twisted. He's showing that he is far more terrifying than the bad guy. He's messing with this woman's head, just assuming, oh, well, you're a sex worker. Doesn't matter you're a slave. Doesn't matter. You're just an orifice. An object to be used. And then at the later scene, when they're supposed to be shooting a shot glass of scotch off her head, and Bond's supposed to be shaky because he still hasn't recovered from his injuries, and the bad guy just shoots her in the head, and Bond's response is a waste of good scotch. Now, yes, you could say, well, there's bravado there, but it still was an act of inhumanity. And then he captures the bad guy. Okay, he captures the bad guy. Now, Bond has shown he has a certain vengeful streak in him in the three films that Craig has done. All right? Now, well, I would not do what I'm about to describe because it would be immoral. The character of Bond, as written and played by Daniel Craig, could and has done this before. So it would be perfectly in character. And if I were playing that, if I were writing that scene and that right for that character, I would have had Bond kneecap the bad guy. Just blow his friggin' kneecap off with the pistol he had in his hand. And this does two things. Incapacitates him and gets revenge for the fact that he just killed a woman in cold blood. Murdered her. They need this guy alive. That would be a vengeful act I could completely believe that Daniel Craig's James Bond would do. Additionally, it would mean the guy can't run away in the next scenes. It puts him at a physical handicap. The bad guys have done this to Bond. Strap him to chairs. Beat him with ropes. But Bond, who's shown he's willing to shoot a guy in the leg just to immobilize him, doesn't do it. Because they need the bad guy to do something in the next scene. The writer's hand in this film was incredibly heavy. Things moved along because he needed the plot to move along in that direction. The timing that the bad guy was able to achieve with his thugs was incredible. Every single time the bad guy needed to be somewhere, boom, there his thugs were. It was perfect. It was flawless. He was the Mary Sue of the film. Because that's what the writer needed it to happen. It took away from my ability to believe that these were supposed to be real people. Also, it appears that the police force in Britain has been trained by the stormtroopers as far as marksmanship is concerned. At one point, 3 people are shooting at the bad guy in a courtroom. 3 people! You know, from different parts of the room. You know how hard is it for one person to keep himself protected from one gunman, let alone 3 different sources coming from different angles, and yet none of them can hit him? Why? Because they need him alive in the next scene. So, it was just poorly done. And then we get to the third act. They're hiding Judi Dench, M, at the home that Bond grew up in. Was it Alec Finney? Alec Finney was the groundskeeper. I think that's what it was. Very well done. I enjoyed his. I liked the house. It was nice. My wife and I both wanted to move there when we saw it. And she's again portrayed as being weak. There's one scene in the film where she stands up and shows that she's got some intestinal fortitude. But for the rest of the film, she's shown as being on the defensive and the reactionary. And in the last reel of the film, she's shown as not being able to defend herself. Now, the groundskeeper, both of these characters are old. And the groundskeeper are both old. They're elderly. He's allowed to kill some of the bad guys. Yes, they were just pointless mooks. But he was at least allowed to show that he had the strength to defend himself, while M was not. And at the final scene, where the bad guy is... Bond throws a knife in his back, a Scottish dirk, which are not meant for throwing, by the way. It would be incredibly hard to do. And he turns around. Why doesn't Judi Dench's M kill him? We should give M that final scene. She's about to die. You couldn't have let her die as a warrior. Like I said, the misogyny and sexism in this film was incredible. And of course, the final scene is that you get to see Benny Penny in a pretty pastel dress, because now she is no longer a field agent. Because she couldn't play with the big boys. So, well, yes, it was a fun James Bond movie. But I'm really hoping, if Craig plays this character again, that the writers will give equal treatment to women in the storyline. Will show that they're just as capable of being strong and capable and vicious and crazy and as everything else that every man is capable of doing, as opposed to showing them being weak and passive and needing protection, or sex slaves that just do what they're told because they are nothing but an object to fuck. So yeah, I'm disappointed in the way this film was presented. I'm disappointed in the writing and the direction. I don't know if it has commentary on the track. I'll have to see if it does. I may watch it again to see if it does have commentary, or I'll shag one copy down, just because I really like to see the director's ideas of why he did what he did. There must be a reason. Maybe he just doesn't like women. I don't know. But I like Craig, and I would like to see Craig play this character again. He does an incredible good job at this. But I'm really disappointed in the film Skyfall.